town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie.
As they celebrated their first American Christmas, our little sisters in Baltimore noted that the donations received included 12 turkeys, 4 ducks, 16 chickens, and so many other good things that we didn't know what to do with it all. They concluded, "In this country, Christmas is like the feast of the poor." In this country, Christmas is like the feast of the poor. Let's take a look at Christmas giving in 19th century America to see if this was true. In 1843, Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol, telling the story of the miserly Ebenezer Scrooge and his Christmas Eve conversion. As the story opens, Scrooge is approached by 2 men asking for a cash donation to help the poor. He refuses, answering that there are prisons and workhouses for the destitute, and he pays taxes to support them. Dickens' story is set in England, but he had visited the United States and probably observed Scrooge's attitude in U.S. cities as well as in his homeland. Our young nation was being built up through the hard work, self-reliance, and pioneering spirit of its citizens. Commerce and industry were taking off, and with them a new spirit of competition and the unrelenting pursuit of profit. There was also a growing social divide between the rich and the poor. Like Scrooge, many Americans believed that the unworthy poor, those who were judged to have caused their own misery, belonged in prison or the workhouse, where the conditions were anything but humane. The indigent elderly often had to fend for themselves in the poorhouse. The one group of destitute individuals that elicited universal sympathy was impoverished children. People concerned about poverty were encouraged to donate to churches or charitable institutions rather than giving directly to the poor. A January 1844 article in the New York Tribune advised that if all the money wasted on unnecessary Christmas trifles was rightly appropriated, pauperism and its attendant miseries could be eliminated. An 1853 editorial in the same newspaper ran with the headline, "Do not give to street beggars." Giving directly to the poor was believed to encourage and embolden beggary. The New York Times expressed similar sentiments. An 1854 editorial asserted that money contributed to worthy organizations will find where the misery is. If a man has money and does not know how he can make the most of it, the paper urged, let him step into the offices of any of those excellent institutions in whose hands, if you place $1, you do what individually you could not make $5 do. Charitable giving was on its way to becoming a well-oiled machine. By the late 1800s, charitable Christmas dinners in New York City had developed into what one historian refers to as a spectator sport reeking of exploitation. At one holiday event in Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people were fed in shifts. An historian describes the scene. These dinners were great public spectacles, expertly organized. As the hungry and homeless were fed at tables on the arena floor under the glare of electric lights, more prosperous New Yorkers paid to be admitted to the garden's boxes and galleries where they observed the gorging. I hope you'll agree that such mass charity lacked a truly Christian approach and any sense of the dignity of the human person. In the late 1860s and 70s, the Little Sisters were a fledgling community in a foreign land, so the people who supported us were definitely taking a risk. Looking back, I'm so grateful to all those who have taken a risk on us these past 150 years. But I'm especially grateful for those who give the gift of their presence and those who know how to go beyond what might be considered life's necessities in order to make the elderly feel loved. Mrs. Pamelia Reggio, Boston's wealthiest woman, invested generously in our first home there, but she also brought treats intended to give the residents pleasure, like good wine and fresh oranges, and enjoyed spending time with them on a regular basis. Another lovely Christmas story comes from our home in Louisville, Kentucky. The Galt House Hotel, a Louisville institution, donated leftovers on a daily basis. On Christmas Day in 1869, the hotel management requested that the sisters send their begging wagon over to the hotel at noon. The little sisters assumed they would receive leftovers, as they usually did, but the hotel employees filled the wagon with freshly made treats of all kinds, which made the residents quite happy. Thanks to the generosity of such wonderful people, we can see how the sisters could say that in this country, Christmas is like the feast of the poor. Charitable institutions of all types will always play an important role in relieving the distress of the poor. But contrary to what the New York Tribune asserted, poverty will never be completely eliminated. Christ himself foretold, "The poor you will always have with you," and "Whatsoever you do to the least of my brethren, you do to me." As we reflect on how best to respond to the cry of the poor in our time, I'd like to suggest that even the most destitute individual deserves a look of love and the gift of humanity. In his encyclical on charity, Pope Benedict XVI wrote that when we look on others from the perspective of Jesus Christ himself, we can perceive in them an interior desire for a sign of love and concern. This I can offer them not only through the organizations intended for such purposes, accepting those perhaps as a political necessity. Seeing with the eyes of Christ, he wrote, I can give to others much more than their outward necessities. I can give them the look of love which they crave. Let's try to be generous in giving this look of love this Christmas.
With us, our Lord,